Next question, and I'm sure this is on the mind of a lot of audience members right now. Is asexuality normal?
Is it normal? Who cares?
You hear that? I'm applauding. That was a wonderful...
Statistically, I don't know. Like I said, we think initial scientific estimates put us at 1% of the population. Just based on going around and talking to people, and the amount of times that I will get up in front of a crowd and give a speech and have someone walk up to me afterward and say, you know what, I really resounded, I really related to that. I think that this could be a way for me to talk about myself. There are a lot of us out there, and I guess if you're going to gauge normality by how similar our experience is to that of sexual people, in a lot of ways it's really, really similar. Because we have the same needs in relationships, and a lot of the ways that we think about relationships and a lot of the things that we experience in relationships are very, very similar. But I also think that we have a unique perspective, and we're thinking things about sexuality that no one's ever thought before, and exploring ways of living our lives that I've never seen anyone else explore before. And that's very new, and it's very exciting.
Was there been any experience during your activism, doing interviews and so on, was there anything that you weren't expecting that turned out to be a very challenging or negative experience?
Not really. The nice thing about... One of the interesting things about being asexual, I've found, is that people are really, really curious about it. So I've had discussions, as soon as I started coming out to people when I was in college, I just started having these long, intense discussions about asexuality all the time with tons of different people. And when you've had that discussion a certain number of times, you just know it back to front. And so I rarely find that I'll get things that completely surprise me. Though I've had some tough interviews. I was just on The View, which is this show on ABC. It was kind of intense, but for the most part, it's I feel like we in the asexual community have talked about this stuff a lot more than other people have. So the questions that other people are asking are inevitably questions that we've already asked ourselves in some way.
Got a couple of other questions for you here. If a person is asexual and doesn't have any sexual desire, when it comes to becoming a parent, although this makes the children that much more safe, maybe more foster parents should be asexual so that children don't end up being the abuse of any sexual desires there that shouldn't be. There's also the argument that a parent who can't understand sexual desire might not be able to guide their children when their children are starting to go through sexual desire. What do you think about all that?
I think that any child's sexuality is going to be different enough from that of their parents that I'm not going to be that much better or that much worse off. I have a strong understanding of sexuality. As I said, because it was something that I grew up having no internal perspective to understand, I've kind of had to spend a lot of time coming to terms with it and gaining an intellectual understanding of it so that I could interact with it in the world. So I'm not completely without context to understand the sexuality of other people. And I think it would be a challenge, but no more of a challenge than having a child grow up in a very different time. Having a child grow up in a time where sexuality means a very different thing than it meant when you were a kid.
If a person is unable to feel sexual desires, can they recognize when someone else is flirting with them or making advances?
Oh, yeah. Well, so you wouldn't depends on how heads up they are, but I definitely can. And when I was young and naive, I used to shy away from that. But now I just flirt right back, and I hit on people because I've realized that if someone hits on me, they may in their mind think it's about sexuality, but it's always about more than sexuality. They're interested in me. They're interested in engaging me as a person, and I can take that in a direction that's not sexuality that both of us are going to find enjoyable.
Do you think that people are more likely to be attracted to you because you're asexual, because you don't give off any sort of sexual vibe?
I have no idea. I think of myself as a reasonably attractive person, but I don't have a basis of comparison.
And one last question: if someone once felt sexual feelings and due to a bad experience has shut off all of their emotions, sexual emotions, would that qualify them as asexual?
Well, if I guess alluded to this earlier. If someone comes to the website and identifies as asexual, they're asexual. We don't go through and label people. We don't say you're really asexual and you're not. So if they came to the website and they identified with what we were talking about and they decided to start calling themselves asexual, then yeah, so we would acknowledge them as asexual.
So it's not something they're born with necessarily.
Most asexual people have been asexual for their entire lives, don't have a traumatic experience associated with sexuality, and haven't changed. You know, we have people in their 60s, their 70s, and down to their teens. There's a huge age range. So I would say that the majority of asexual people have been born this way, but as I said, there's no hard scientific data. That person, though, that you were talking about, someone who's emotionally closed off, and that's why they're avoiding sexuality. If that person comes to the community and identifies as asexual, we won't tell them, oh no, you're just emotionally closed off, you really need to be exploring sex. We will challenge them. As I've been alluding to, asexuality asexual people aren't emotionally closed off. If you have issues that are preventing you from forming a relationship as a sexual person, those issues will prevent you from forming a relationship as an asexual person. And our community is a place that challenges people to do that, that challenges people to explore the ways that they're connecting with people.
One last question before we sign off. If you could go back in time and give your younger self some advice, what advice would that be?
I'd be afraid to do that because I've been so lucky so far in having this community come together. But I guess it would be, don't take sexuality too seriously. Sexuality, I think when I was younger, I got really caught up in being asexual because I felt like sexuality was this big deal, and it's not this big deal. The liberating thing for me about being asexual has been realizing that for some people, sex matters a lot. For me, it doesn't have to matter at all.
David, it's been absolutely wonderful having you here on Frank Talks.
Okay.
And we certainly hope that you'll be tuning in and that we invite you back to come and be interviewed in the future.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Can you give us your contact information one more time for our audience?
The website is www.asexuality.org. If anyone wants to send me an email, they can email me at webmaster@asexuality.org.
You're listening to Frank Talks Pleasures and Lifestyles.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test, a man's guide to the emotional needs of women. Ladies, does your man squash your inner vixen? When you ask him to repeat what you have just said to him, does he look at you like a deer caught in the headlights? Does he think that leaving the game on while you talk to him is a good idea? Is his favorite phrase, "Yes, dear, you are absolutely right"? Does wife or girlfriend mean boring and dull to him? Ladies, don't you wish that he knows what you mean when you ask him if you look fat? Then you need to buy him the book, Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test, a man's guide to the emotional needs of women. On sale now at franktalks.com.